Welcome back, everyone. As it came up in the poll, this was one of the ones that you guys were really interested in hearing about, as this is what I would consider end up being more than 10, but 10 main improvements from your standard factory four drive you'd probably want to do aftermarket to get it to perform best when you come to being off-road. Now, before I go through that list, I just want to go through a little intro. I'm not going to read everything out, so if you want, you can pause and have a look at what I've written there. But summing it up, it's that essentially I'm not going to go into all the models or particular models apart from the fact that I might mention mine more than anything, as I know that mostly because I've got my one and I know a lot more about it. But each one comes different, and I'll introduce four in a sec and make mention specifically of the fact that each four of those have different clearance, and that different clearance and stuff would mean that it might change the order in which you would make changes to your vehicle depending upon your financial resources and so forth. So certain things would be done in a certain order differently, perhaps if I had a different model over the one I've got, for example. And that obviously some four-wheel drives that come off the market, they might have some features that we list in here, so you might not need to include them. Some top-end things have things like rear diff lockers like that, or hill descent control and all sorts of fancy stuff, which might not really be that necessary, but can help. Anyway, so there is some movement within that. It's just how I would do it, because I consider the most important thing before you're going off-roading is traction and ground clearance. And ground clearance comes down to your tyres, which comes down to your suspension and possible lift kits to help with that. And because you need that lift to be able to put on the type of tyre or a bigger tyre, because that's the only thing that actually improves overall clearance. The types of tyres, rims, overall sizes, widths, etc. I'll go into that when we cover tyres. The order might change somewhat depending upon your financial situation. Say if you've got brand new tyres, I wouldn't go out and change them straight away. I'd wait until my tyres are getting ready to be changed first. So anyway, a quick comparison between a couple of cars. So obviously the Triton on the left here, its minimum ground clearance is only a 205. So standard off, this is brand new, I think 19 or 20 model, comes off with 205 clearance. So that means the lowest point of any object of this vehicle to the ground is only 205 mils up. Okay, so that's the reason why that's important, is that it doesn't matter how fantastic it is. When you let down your tires, which you need to do for four-wheel driving, you're actually reducing this clearance slightly as well. So that was where tyres and suspension and kit and lifting and so forth becomes important. Where over here, your patrol, you can see your ground clearance unladen is 272. So you're getting extra 70 mils of ground clearance across the board in just this type of model. Take into account though, right? This is when we talk about tyres. This tyres that come with the Triton, it's not written there, but it's generally the standard's the 245 size by 65 on a 16-inch rim. This one's Patrol comes out at the 265 by 70 on 18-inch rims, although the rim size is a pro. I wouldn't be happy with my rim size for this, and I'll go into why soon. Next one up is your Hilux. Hilux, known for being better off-road, or I wouldn't say better off-road, known for being tougher, but and usually feature more, but they cost a lot more. This one comes with clearance, this model, with 279% 279 mils off-road clearance. So that's quite high. Again, in comparison, you get an extra 79 or 70 odd or 79 mils more clearance compared to a Toyota Prado, whose base clearance is only 219 mils. Very similar to the Tri. That's the base model. Oh, sorry, that's the standard model, because they're all the same across the board. But again, the tire sizes. Both of these comes with 265 sizes. The Hilux is 265 by 60s, and the Prados is 265 by 65. Both have the Hilux in this picture has a different size rim because of the model, but the new one comes with an 18-inch, and the Prado comes in 17-inch rims. Now, looking at tires and understanding them is really important. So some of the aspects we'll look at in a bit is the types of treads. But first, understanding what they mean when I spit out these numbers. So the first number that we say, so let's just stick with the common theme for most of them was 265. So that means that's 265 mils from this side to this side. Okay, that's the width of the tire. Okay, that's why this one's smaller than this one, and this one pretty much is the same width as this one. The only difference between these two is that this one has a slightly different profile. Now, the profile, that's the distance between the edge of the rim and the top of the tire. So profiles that are higher are better for off-roading. The reason why it's important, you see as you can go down here, you got 15-inch rims, and then you can see this 16-inch rim, and then you can see the 17-inch rim. Same size tire across the board, and you can see the loss between a 15, 16, and 17-inch rim, the loss of actual rubber that happens. All right, you lose rubber as you go up in rim size. So a smaller rim on the same tire has more rubber. And the reason why we need more rubber is when you deflate the tire, you're getting a bigger contact surface with the bottom. So we want as big as like this nice big flat profile bottom with the surface of the ground. So having these profiles which are large, you rarely ever see a 15-inch rim. They're generally the lowest you can get, generally most of the time, to fit with your disc brakes. A 16-inch, but worst case go to 7-inch, but 16 inches it would be ideal. It would mean that you've got a lot more rubber to work with, you've got a lot more able to be let down, so you can have a fatter tire, more traction. All right. In the next slide, I'll go through highway and terrain tires and all terrain and so forth from there. But the important thing to understand from this is that look for a tire that's going to get you higher off the ground, and that but also maintains a smaller rim size as you can, so you can have a better profile tire to give yourself more traction. Moving along. So this is just a standard highway terrain tire, and this one's an all-terrain tire. Okay, so your factory, you're going to come out with an a highway terrain tire. Now, this bit over the side here just gives you an idea, indication for this particular brand. Each brand's going to be slightly different as to its efficiency. So obviously a highway terrain tire, better fuel economy, better traction when it's wet, and sound is lower. An all-terrain fuel economy is going to go up slightly, as in it's going to chew through more petrol for the same sort of distance. Not as great as capabilities in the wet, and obviously slightly louder. That's why when you see a big giant mud terrain tire flicking past you on the freeway, you might hear this big whirring noise. That's that noise you're hearing. This is this huge one. So generally most people compromise and go for an all-terrain tire. An all-terrain tire, most all-terrain tires sit with between what they say percentage, where you go 70% of your use is on the road and 30% is on off-road. And the compromise comes from the fact that the gaps here between all these treads are larger than what you'd see in a highway terrain tire. These are all small ones, so it allows this allows for the mud and sand and clumps to be able to fall out easier as the tire rotates around. And importantly, you notice how there's not much tread going across the edge of the tire. You can see the treads coming further down this edge of this tire, because when you deflate your tire, you end up using more of the side wall of the tire. So tread on the side wall of the tire helps increase traction. So if your usage is going to be less road and more four-wheel drive, then you might go up a scale. Some have a range that's slightly above an all-terrain, which is, say, 60-40. Then the next one's generally mud terrain, which is, I think, 40-60. And that's when you get those real big, chunky-ass tires. So that's the main difference. So I say sometimes I've heard a lot of comments that highway terrain tires work just as well on beach as an all-terrain tire, because of the sand is able to fall out of the small gaps just as easy. But in my experience, it's great if it's if it's dry sand. Yes, it will. But when most beaches are definitely wet and will tend to stick in that, and you'll just end up with this just feeling just nothing more than like it's completely soft and flat and easy to run your hand across, and it's not grabbing the traction, and particularly the fact that it doesn't have sidewalls is the issue. So they say you can, but I found it's nowhere near as effective as an all-terrain tire when changing the difference. So just as a highlight here, to improve your overall clearance height, it's the tire size that you need to change. That's what boosts your vehicle height and improve the overall height. Your suspension and lift makes that possible. That's what the key is there. So tires and suspension / lift kit are sort of linked together in that one sort of and the other roll into each other. So if you put a big ass fat tire on a car that doesn't have a lift kit or something on it, see how this one here, this has had a 2-inch lift. You can tell simply by, and same with this one, before and after. See, so the same tire on this one, but look at the difference between the amount of space between the bottom of the tire and the top of the rim. A lot more space. So that means I can now put a larger profile tire. You can see the overall height of this car chassis has been raised, but your diff's still sitting at the exact same place it was prior to the lift itself. The diff's still sitting down at that same height. So that's why get the bigger wheel and it lifts that up off the ground even further. So that's what that enables. I'm sorry, went too far ahead. Like I said, 2 inches is generally what's done, because more than that, then you start mucking around with a lot of things. So 2 inch is generally the normal legal standard that most people bother. And that enables you to put those bigger tires on. It also enables your tire to have a lot more room to maneuver within the space it's given for more flexibility. Okay, so that's the important thing is, particularly for people who might be doing more rock forward driving, having that space for your tyre to flex better is important. And your suspension changes. If you've got great factory off-road suspension, some makers come out with great ones with their factories, and you go, oh, I don't need to do that, I'll just do a lift kit instead and not change my suspension. That's up to you. And also the types of makers of different suspension kits are all different, and they cost different amounts. This is Ironman because I've got Ironman, but cost-wise compared to, say, the ARB Bush Ranger, the Bush Ranger is more expensive, so sometimes it comes down to preference and what you've heard other people say, all sorts. So research is important when it comes to this sort of thing, and what you're going to do when it comes to changing suspension, because it is a costly endeavour. So understand whether you need to do it in the first place, but definitely a lift kit so that you can modify that tyre to give you the height. Now, this is the one that people might think is, why have you even got this listed in here? This is something you just carry as an accessory, and why so high? Mostly I've put it up here as high as I have, is the fact that you're constantly having to deflate and inflate your tyres. Whenever you go off-road, you're deflating your tyre. So, and as soon as you come off back on, you're going to have to inflate. And I don't know about you, but spending a lot of time inflating my tyres is annoying and frustrating. Having a proper one put under the hood bonnet that's always there, where all you need to do is plug in your attachment and run it to your tyre, pumping up much like a servo. Makes things and life a lot easier, and you don't have to worry about it ever again. In addition to this, if you're thinking long term and you're wanting to have the option of putting some sort of diff lockers in place that are activated by air compressing or an air compressor, it'll need to be on board anyway as part of that. So that's why I've listed it kind of up there. So really, this is how I would, the importance I would give it, but again, it would come down to preference and going, well, I've got a carry on, I'll stick with that for the time being and put my money into something else first. But because of how often you're doing it, you'll find the time that you save doing this sort of things. And a lot of these now come with 2- and 4-way adapters, so you can just plug it in and attach to all your wheels and pump away. And the newer versions come with dual compressors plus a tank on the side, so refills rate is within minutes. So, it's fantastic when they're done correctly. Now, this one says this is ARB. I've just listed ARB because I grabbed their pictures. So research your own compressor, because a lot of brands are different, the outputs are all different, so and the prices are different, so it's up to you. And as I mentioned here, if you're getting the RV one and you have it with the link system they have, that means you can use it in combination with your diff lockers and control the tire pressure from inside the car with like a little phone thing. Next thing I put up is recovery points. Most people don't realize that when you come out of the standard factory with your four-wheel drive, most of them will not, if not all, do not come with any recovery points. Recovery points are there's some pictures of ones that are that get manually placed in, but these things here, there. So if you've got a bull bar, there's generally, most makers of bull bars will have recovery points that are attached to the bull bar. But that's what you put these big U shackles on that you attach your snatch strap onto. So if you just bought your standard four-wheel drive, you went out to the beach and you got yourself stuck, and you get and for whatever reason, snatch strapping was the option to get you out. If you didn't have a recovery point, any other point that you use to pull your vehicle may end up damaging your vehicle, or means you just can't use the snatch strap at all. And when it comes to being off-road, you are going to get bogged regardless of the situation. Eventually, at some stage, you're going to get stuck. So making sure that you're in a position where if you can't find a way of self-recovery, that you have those recovery points put in. And this may be done if you're going, oh, I've got to get a bull bar and I'm going to be doing it at the same time. Do it at the same time then. If not, if that's not high on your agenda, they're not that expensive to have fitted earlier on in the piece, and it's peace of mind knowing that you get unstuck in a very bad situation, if need be. This is actually, you can actually see this is RBE's old Emu suspension. I can see it there. That's their brand model. All right, the next one up I put is your bull bar. That's what I would say is one of the more important aspects of a four-wheel drive. And there's heaps of options when it comes to bull bars, like full-on steel. There's alloys, variations to it. So this one's a bull bar alloys that come up shaped differently. And sometimes your bull bars generally can also form part of a side protection. So a bull bar, and then you buy so like this one's got side steps on it already. These ones look like they're the proper steel side steps. So this is actually rounded steel. And if you had a proper bull bar like this one, you'd actually find that there's a metal pole that runs around to the front and attaches to this bar here. It's just to help to protect the side if you were to knock into rocks or so forth, or hit sides of objects. It takes the brunt, not your panels. And I put this one first because generally you need a bull bar or a nudge bar in this aspect to put on spotties and UHF, and a winch. Bull bars have winches. If you get a nudge bar, unfortunately you're not going to have winches. This is a spot for winches right there. So, and a lot of bull bars generally come with underbody protection for just this front section from where it comes in. They're quite expensive. That's the only real major downside, is they are expensive. You've got to order them in. It takes time to get them fit because they actually have to cut away at your frame to get it fitted on. I have a picture later of another vehicle I saw just recently where I was comparing my model to theirs, and they've got theirs done, and you can see that they cut this and they shape the sides of the bull bar to it to protect all the front area of your vehicle, so none of this would get damaged. This side bit is all protected by the bull bar. But yeah, so there's some options around steel, and alloy steel's heavier, obviously. Some people say it takes more hits than an alloy does. So, it's a choice. So something I would research and personal decision in the head, in your head. And would be ahead of, obviously, spotties and UHF. And speaking of that, that's what the next thing I'd put on straight away is spotties and UHF. Now, I do have up next roof racks, and I was debating putting roof racks ahead of this, but because of, I would say, for safety aspects of four-wheel driving, I would slightly lean towards this over it, especially because you're already looking at a bull bar. If you're fitting a bull bar, then you might as well fit a UHF and spotlight with it. So if you're doing one, do the lot, because they have to take the whole front of it off and cut away at your car. So whilst they're doing all of that, you might as well have them attach all of this and run the wiring through at the same time. It saves you having coming back later and them having to spend extra time having to pull bits off to run the wiring through. So generally I would say if you're going to spend the money, which is quite expensive, bull bars are anywhere from $2,500 just on their own, upwards and upwards from there. And then it's quite a lot to then get them installed. spotties, depending on the types that you get. You can get spotties like this, as well as the front bars. You can get both together. UHFs aren't that expensive to get to buy. What was the last time I saw on something around about $300-400 or something fitted, I think, from memory. But that was brand named good ones, so could get it cheaper. But and the lights, depending on the types as well, LEDs, high intensities, all change the pricings. So, but yeah, for safety reasons, I would say when you're getting your bull bar, chuck in the UHF and your spotties as well, because it needs to be done at the same time, and it is for safety aspect. If you don't find a reception, you can always jump on your UHF, and you might be able to reach someone else who's forward driving in nearby, who might be able to come out and assist you if you get stuck, or if you're in a situation where you don't have phone reception and something's happened. So that's why that's kind of important. And spotties, pretty much self-explanatory. If you're off-roading at night time, it'll light up everywhere, especially if you've got your front bars as well, mounted not only for the bull bar but to the top, to your roof racks and stuff. You can light up the entire area and spot hazards before you hit them. And on long journeys, if you're doing a lot of long journeys at night, you're obviously going to see further and see that kangaroo before it sees you. Sorry, see that kangaroo before it sees your bull bar. So that's why I would put them up there slightly above roof racks. So that's obviously what's next. Roof racks or roof bars, carriers are similar. These are, I would say, one of those important things that needs to be put on. Whether you're just fixing an awning to it, a lot of us that go off-road, an awning's fantastic because it gives you the shade. You pull out and you just pull it out and give yourself shade. You need a roof rack to have that set up in place, or you can have these things like roof platforms, depending on the type of models, or cages like this one. This one looks like that one's a flat. This one's got fixed to the back for his bicycles, but or just simple bars. If it's just simple bars carrying stuff, long journeys as well, you can put things on top of the roof to help carry the load. Particularly if you start doing long off-road journeys, you might put a cage like this on top of your bars and put extra jerrys, spare wheels and so forth up the top. But it's there because you'll find that I don't know many off-road vehicles that wouldn't have a roof rack of some description or a carry system up there for those reasons, to carry stuff and for awnings or even rooftop tents and so forth. They become really handy. And I did debate also moving this one up the list as well, but it also depends on the type of model of vehicle you get. Some include this as standard. This is actually a picture of my Triton. It came with my model. It came with a bash plate. They call it underbody protection, but bash plate's another word for it. A bash plate to the front. So this, you can see, it protects the engine bay and the transmission area. And that's an ARB's just their version of the same sort of thing. This one's just Triton's one, so they got their word Triton written on it. These are diff covers, so this goes across your diff. So these are really not thought of very often until you actually hit something like a rock and you puncture your transmission, or you put a hole in your rear diff and you're not going anywhere. So for the cost involved in buying something like this is probably might save you some big repair bills in the future. Even if all you get is the standard front bash plate that goes across the main engine bay area and then your transmission area. Mine finishes just a bit back further here, but there's nothing from there as you went back towards the diff. You can see here almost. The diff sits way back there. I want another plate that sits between, there's a bar around about here, and there's another bar a bit further back, which you can actually bolt on another bash plate to basically protect everything all the way underneath, including your fuel, my fuel compartment, which sits just on this side a little bit further higher up, but it would protect all that area from anything where you accidentally go over something and there's a rock there. Even if you're forward driving on the beach, maybe you go over a dune, you don't realise that maybe there's a giant big rock, limestone rock there that then juts out and smashes into the underneath and punches a hole in something. So even though you can pay it off, it's not that important, I still think it is to have something there for peace of mind, to have that bash plate. And this is what I talked about, that side protection. So having, this is, if you got alloy, is different from the steel, the pipe steel. This is pipe steel, goes up, finishes around here, and then this wraps around to the front of the bull bar. So this just protects the side of it. So as you're going up, say if you're going up between, up rocks, between two hillsides, the last thing you want to do is hit into the side of the hill with your panel and smash your panel. You'd rather it smash into the pole and damage this pole, because who cares about that? That's not a big deal to dent these, but it is if you're damaging your other stuff. So that's why these are important. Same with your the side protection down here, or your foot steps. I actually went over a small mound with mine that was probably slightly too much, had too much of a loop like this, and I ended up not putting a nice big dent in the side of my sidewall. And I'm so much happier having a dent in my side step than I am having a dent in the side of my car. So, and that was just a small innocuous thing. So once again, protection like that could be really helpful. Last up, I've just stuck these together because these are non-essential but really cool things to have, but are expensive and not always used. Like, for example, snorkels are great if you're going to be going and doing water crossing. You don't want to damage your engine. I've got a snorkel, but have you been in a situation where I need to use it? No, not yet, but I've got it there. Although they're not super expensive, I had it added on, I think, $500 I think they are if you're doing other things at the same time to get one fitted, so they're not huge expenses. And it just means that you've got the option that's available. Winches, they are expensive, unfortunately. And one, you need your bull bar to add it in, but winches are fantastic for helping you out of a lot of situations, whether it be featured more in mud and rock, where you want to wrap around a tree and pull yourself up, or sometimes recovering other vehicles, possibly. You can be used in that scenario. And on the beach, you can use them with ground anchors and DIY ground anchors, like your tire dug into a hole. You can use your winch to pull yourself out in situations as well. So the winch is a great feature to have, something I want to put on my vehicle when I've got the money for it. But yeah, expensive, very expensive to have. I think $2,500, $3,000 or something, depending on obviously the brand. This is a wine winch, so the brand name is quite expensive. And obviously brands can be different, so research again around that. Dual battery systems, I think they're a good idea. They're not that expensive. They're a great backup feature, as well as if you're an off-roader that runs things like you got your fridge in the back or other electronics that you're running while you're driving, or even when you've stopped. Instead of running off your starter motor, it automatically switches to your secondary battery, which is just a slow feed electrical, so it just keeps things running, but stops it dragging off your starter battery. So when you go to start your car the next day, it's going to go. And it's also a backup option. So it's a good thing if you have a few extra dollars. I would throw it in because of that the safety feature, two, the fact that as you do up your vehicle and you go, I want to have a fridge and some drawers and stuff, because I would say I'd put drawers in my four-wheel drive, but that's another one of those I would likes but aren't essential. I would put the dual battery system in first. And lastly, I put in lockers. Now, as I mentioned, my four-wheel drive comes standard with a rear diff locker, and diff lockers are fantastic for forward driving and getting traction. Now, if you've got lucky and yours comes with one standard for the rear, I haven't seen one come standard with a front diff locker. It essentially locks that differential in so that it sends equal power to both wheels regardless of what sort of traction you have. So it can help you get out of a lot of situations where say one wheel's in the air or one wheel's not got so much traction, the other one does. Locking in that diff then prevents one wheel from spinning and the other not. And if you get the finances for it, you can stick it in the front, and it's run through, like I said, the underbonnet air compressor, and that can help you get going. Often used, you'll find a lot of people who go rock four-wheel driving will have front diff lockers, because often you'll find that one will be up in the air and the other will be down low with the traction, and you'll find the one in the air just spinning around without a diff locker, because that's the only way you're going to get power going to those both wheels equally is with a diff locker, and that's done through front with air compressors and so forth. So, but they are kind of expensive to put in. So once again, this is more of a wish list of things that if you've got the money to, throw it in. But the big two's up the top. But as I said, summary, so always check your factory standard vehicle to see what priority of aftermarkets to go with first. So if you've got certain things like rear diff lockers and a lot of ground clearance, then you might tend towards a different way first. If you've got a standard factory vehicle that comes with off-road suspension with your particular model, then you're not going to upgrade your suspension. You'll get a lift kit instead, and then you might go, now I'll change my tires, because I haven't seen, not that I haven't seen, but it's rare to get models that come with all-terrain tires at the right size, at the right rims, off the factories. Generally, it's aftermarket. So, once again, most priority is around about that tire and suspension and lift kit. So those are the three. Those are the priorities. Is that getting that clearance, because that clearance means that even when you're going on the beach and you're lowering your tires, you're not going to be bottoming out on the sand as you go along the ruts and creating a lot of friction, which would slow you down. And if you're heading off up rocks and so forth, that clearance will help. Same with mud. Tyres will suit both of those scenarios, and try and look for ones with what we call light truck construction. So have a look at the tyres when you go and get them. It's always good to get advice and see other people's opinion on tyre brands and how they think they perform. Money comes into it as well, but the light truck constructions are just they're a bit stronger, particularly on the sidewall problem, less issue of punches and so forth. Anyway, so research your brand, get advice if possible from others that have used the same products before spending money, because all of these upgrades are super expensive. So make sure you get the right one, and to sort of pick between brand and reliability and so forth, and costing, and find where you want to sit with that. with your tyres, maximise your size to get the greatest lift. And like I mentioned there, look for light truck construction tyres. So they last longer and they're tougher, often worth investigating before you spend money, okay? And try and reduce the rim size of your vehicle to enable that tyre profile to be bigger so that when you deflate, you've got a bigger footprint. So most cars think having an 18-inch rim is awesome, but that means that that profile is going to be smaller. But you might be limited by if it's got big giant disc brakes or something in there, which means you can't fit a lower rim size in there. So it's also something to consider before buying a car too, to have a look at that. So rim size is good if you could get, say, a 16-inch rim and bigger profile tyres, better traction, bigger tyre. And with that lift kit, you're going places. Anyway, moving on quickly. Always manage your tyres with the right ratio of use you do with your four-drive. So don't get mud trains if you're going to be driving it a lot on the road. That's why a lot of people are like me. I've got all trains because most of my stuff is done on the road, but I love going forward driving. I spend my weekends forward driving. So, you manage it and manage the tight sun, have a little bit better off-roading capabilities, slightly more than an all-terrain. So if I'm really passionate, I might go that way. And make sure your lift is legal before getting it done as well. And whether or not you need a lot of extras done if you do lift it too high. Remember, all you're doing is raising the chassis. You're not raising your ground clearance. That's what the tyre does. And make sure your modifications are right for the use of the majority of the forward driving that you do. So don't modify your car, because I do mostly beach forward driving. So a winch for me is probably low down on the list of where I would invest my money, because most of the use I would use it for, it would rarely ever get used. So the cost, I couldn't comprehend putting that much money into it at that stage until I had it there. So, but if I was a rock off, I'd be like, that's high on my list. Ditto with some of the tyre arrangements, and also, like I mentioned in some of the other points, what you should do, just don't buy the cheapest one out there, because as I found out with some items I've bought, I bought a cheapy thing and it broke, and then when I looked at the warranty, I found that the warranty was very constrictive. I think it's what Super Forward Drive Center, if you have a look at their warranty things, on a lot of their products requires you to actually send the product. You can't just take it to a store. You have to get them, lodge a thing, and get sent back over east, and they make a decision and then send it in to you. So it's not like you can rock up to your local store like you're returning an object and saying, hey, it broke, I want a new one. So look into that sort of stuff before you commit, especially if it's a bit of money. And also, don't believe that just because you've got a factory standard forward drive, it's going to be giving you the same capabilities that a modified aftermarket one will. You modify your vehicle and do all these things with it, it's going to be much more capable than the factory standard. And I've got a couple of pictures coming up in a second that'll do something. And don't overlift or go too crazy with some of your aftermarket mods. It's just a waste of money in the end, and it doesn't do a great deal to the performance of your vehicle off-road. And this is of my vehicle. You can see this one, I've got a 2-inch lift, and you can see the big difference between where the tire finishes and the rim starts. Now, I got this one with this rim standard. This is an 18-inch rim. I'm disappointed that when I bought this vehicle, because I bought this ex-demo, that they had the nice forward driving rim, but it's an 18-inch rim. Still a bigger tire size than what was standard, so I do get a much bigger height difference. But when I've run this down a little bit more, I'll be changing this out and dropping my rim size down. As I mentioned with the brakes, you can sort of see the brake on the inside. It's quite small, which means I can fit a much smaller rim to this. So I would go a smaller rim, giving me a better profile this way, meaning I can let down my tire more, giving me much better profile on the sand when I get traction. This is the diff. Like I said, this one's got no diff protector here. It has this little cool thing at the front, which sort of helps with protecting the diff as you go along. It smashes into the front of this, or smash into this before it smashes into the bottom of the diff section here. So it just protects the bottom of the diff, but it isn't a proper diff protector. But it was just to show you. So the lowest point of this vehicle is the diff. So from here to the ground, that's the lowest point. And that's why we want to get a bigger tire, because getting a 2-inch lift is not going to move this diff any higher up. This is a picture of this is actually a brand new Mitsubishi that I actually just was parked next to. I actually should have parked next to it properly so you could see, because I stood away from mine, took a picture of mine, then stood away and took a picture of his. But you can see here, he hasn't got a lift. It's a bit harder to see on the back because of the angle of the photo, but it's easier to see on the front. You can actually see, because I've got aftermarket suspension, my green suspension in here, whereas look at the distance between his tire and the rim there, and obviously the tire size here is a smaller tire size, so you can see the difference between where my side steps finish and the ground finishes, and his side step finish and the ground finishes. But I did like the fact that he has instead gone down the route and he's gone, this is a highway train tire as well. So spent a lot of money obviously on getting a fantastic bull bar, and it looks mint, love it. And as I said to you, when they do this, it costs a bit, and they actually cut away at your vehicle. So mine, if you look back at the other one, when they put the actual, because I got a nudge bar, if you put an actual bull bar, they're cutting this section away when they do it. So, and they cut it away, and then they mold the front of the bull bar on, and they bolt this metal section in, which basically protects all this section of the vehicle and the bash plate underneath. And it's very hard to see in this photo, but right there, that's a recovery point. That's part of the bull bar itself. So the bull bar comes with 2 recovery points. Mine has a recovery point, but I don't have a picture where you can see it. But on the front, there's a recovery point for mine. That's part of the bash plate that's there. But I just really like this. Plus, spotties and UHF. So when you do your bull bar, you chuck in these. I just thought it looked mint. Looks really nice. And I think, I don't have another photo, but he has also a different side step. I've got the standard alloys. He's got a proper, as part obviously of the upgrade he put in. This is a nice steel poled side step. So that's better protection for the vehicle on the side. And there's a pole that runs here, and then around the back he's also got back protection and protection from this angles here. So as you're going around stuff, if you're hitting things here, it's going to be protecting the panels, whereas I don't have anything here protecting the back panel of mine, whereas he does. So if I hit something along this section, I'm damaging this, but on his he wouldn't. So he's removed the standard little bumper out the back, and he's put a steel one around there. So I just included that because I thought it was cool to check out a different one. And you can see here clearly not as much difference between, so there's not a huge amount of space between there. It's easy to see on the front because the rear usually has a bigger gap because of the weight that goes in the back, and the back of mine's weighted down at the moment. But yeah, it's there. And the wheel size, that's important. So yeah, I would, if this was me, yeah, fantastic, great bull bar, but yeah, I would have gone wheel first, mate. Suspension, lift and wheel, and then spend the money on a mint-looking bull bar like that. But anyway, that's been a very long presentation, and I apologise for the length. I may have to do a shortened, sped-up version. But thanks for listening, and talk to you again next time.